what doctors don't understand, because we're not taught business, is that there are so many tax benefits to owning your own business. When you're an employed physician, you can't have any of those benefits. And that's what a lot of doctors don't understand. That's how come you can go into private practice and you can make less money, you think, but actually you're making more because you can govern your overhead, you can have the benefits of the tax advantages, and you're providing a service to the community, you're providing jobs for people. So there's so many things that doctors don't know about that because we're not taught. I needed an office, I needed a place to work. So for the first couple of weeks, my team and I were going to Panera every day and getting that big conference room. I remember patients coming to Panera to sign up for surgery. Whatever you have to do, you make it work.
I'm Mark Cook, president of Windfall Partners. We get leaders unstuck and thriving with their teams. After turnarounds as chief executive, the largest ever studies of award-winning leaders, a New York Times bestseller, and 5-star keynotes. I've coached 4,000 client wins at top brands. My Bold Encounters is an advanced system for leading. First, powerful steps on a path forward. Second, problem-solving skills that beat obstacles fast. Now, lead with Bold Encounters today. Welcome to Bold Encounters. Today, I have someone I met in Las Vegas at a trade show. I heard someone speaking. I wanted to hear what they said at a big convention. I asked if I could go in just for a minute. They let me. I walked in and I sat down in the front row next to Dr. Heather Skeens. How are you, Doctor?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Good.
Nice to see you again.
It's good to see you. Thanks for not nudging me with a sharp elbow and getting me kicked out. That was nice of you to let me have a little conversation with you to catch up. But I got to tell you, I want to, before we get going, you have got some fascinating things to say about entrepreneurship from a place we don't hear a lot about entrepreneurship in. And so I'm really excited about it. It's one of the things that attracted me to talk to you. And the other couple of things that are really interesting to me is that you are someone who has really tried the established healthcare system. And you have gone out on your own and done it a different way. And I have a son that has just graduated from medical school. And not only did he take the MD test a couple of times, he took the DO test. He wanted to know about systems and holistic. But you are something not directly like that. You're something similar in a holistic kind of a way with the systems of the body. You went and got a degree and you did it in functional medicine, which is focused on the root cause. And I like that word. So when you told me that, I thought, I want to talk about this person who goes to the heart of the matter, looks at everything as a whole, tried the traditional route of running a business in medicine, but you left hospitals and clinics and went out on your own as an entrepreneur. I haven't heard of that very much. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to share my story.
I wanted to go back. I think it's really interesting because I don't know you very well, and because I don't know about medicine much. I want to hear about the type of person from the beginning who goes in and does all these things that I just said. So you could take us back to your childhood and tell us about the very beginning and your family life, etc.
Yeah. So I'm from West Virginia, and I was born and raised in a town called Williamson, West Virginia. And Williamson is in a county, Mingo County, that a lot of people know of for the infamous Hatfield and McCoy feud. So that's where I was born and raised until the age of 16. And I didn't have any family members that were physicians. Growing up, in Williamson there, poverty pretty much surrounded us. I grew up with a single mother. My father was still very much involved in my life, but my parents divorced when I was 4, and he moved to Texas to work in the oil fields where he had some family connections. So my mom raised my sister and I, and so she worked most of the time. I mean, she worked when we were in school. She worked at nights. So, my sister and I would take the bus to and from school, and we had keys around our neck. We were latchkey kids and would let ourselves in and I was responsible. I was the older sister, so I was responsible for much of the things around the house when I got home from school. So, so yeah, I didn't grow up with even thinking that you didn't see medicine, didn't think that I was going to be a physician. It was the furthest thing from my mind, probably.
Well, and I have a lot of empathy. I had an assignment to go on another show, and it was because I had lost my father when he was young to death. And it caused me to look up the statistics about people who, because there's so many of us that grow up without a presence that's constant down the street or in the home with mother or father. And it's staggering, even adjusted for income or race or anything you want. The rigorous statistics show that you are behind the eight ball if something like that happens to you as you're young. Did you feel that way?
Yeah, I didn't recognize that when I was younger. As I got older, I recognized it, especially as a female. But I didn't recognize that at the time. I was just too young to understand, I guess. I spent my summers I spent with my father and stepmother in Texas. So, every June when school would let out, my mom would drive my sister and I to Tennessee, and my dad would drive from Texas to Tennessee and meet, and we would exchange. And I would go and spend the summer with him until August when school started back. And so I did have his presence,
Got his
for
influence.
yeah, out of the summer. And so, that was tremendous. So it's not like he left and I never saw him.
Mm.
He was present, but during the school year, it was my mom.
Well, and his dedication and her willingness to do that is a big thing that probably counteracted those statistics. But also this young girl that just does a good job partnering with mom to make the household and the family and the little sister turn out, right?
So it's looking back, it's I think where I learned to take care of things. As physicians, we're always taking care of other people and other things before ourselves. We're sort of very self-sacrificing, and it started at that time, with that responsibility. Looking back on that,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Well, I want to take you to some very practical things in a minute where you talk to us about jumping from an established system into a very entrepreneurial system and give us some specific steps. But before we do that, I want to just go personal one more time, because as you and I talked after the first speaker that we listened to, and recently, I was really touched by what turned you into a caregiver in a very serious manner. Tell me about the situation with your sister when you were a little older, and what you had to do there.
Yeah, my sister, her ex-husband, my former brother-in-law, was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer called sarcoma at the age of 54. And I essentially became his in-home hospice care provider for the last 2 years of his life. I took care of him, going with him to doctor's appointments. Essentially, when I found out that he had this cancer, I just went into major doctor overdrive mode. I was calling every physician, every major cancer center throughout the country, people that I didn't know, trying to get him in with appointments and figure out how to help him. I was constantly reading, constantly researching, constantly in communication with him throughout the day if I wasn't with my own patients or my children. And then towards the end of his life, the last 6 months of his life, him moving in with my sons and I, and me being his in-home hospice care provider. That was a lot. But that actually, that experience is the reason that I practice the way I do today. It is the reason that I'm the physician that I am. It was a turning point in my life. It was a major turning point in my life that led me in a direction that is much better.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary situation. I'm sure there's a lot of that out there, but I'm not aware of any. So an ex brother-in-law, please, if you don't mind, tell us how that all worked family
Sure.
dynamics wise,
Yeah.
and a
Yeah.
remarried sister, etc.
So, so actually, my sister met Reed when she was a student at the University of Kentucky, and he was 14 years her senior. He was already a practicing
Wow.
attorney at the time. Yeah, he was already a practicing attorney. He was a prosecuting attorney for the state of Kentucky. He worked in the governor's office. He was a big advocate for children and for children that had been neglected or abused. Um, and so their relationship, he came into our lives when we were very young. You know, we were in our 20s when he came into our lives. And so early 20s when he came into our lives. So when he passed away, he was in his mid 50s. So there's someone that's been in your life for 25 years consistently. And it's very hard to say that about a lot of people. If you look back, I mean, there's not very many of us that have people that have been in our lives that long. So he was kind of a part of my childhood, but my sister and he, they loved each other immensely, and they could not make it work as a married couple. And so they actually were only married for a couple of years.
Mm,
He was an attorney, so when she decided she wanted a divorce, he did the paperwork for them, and
wow.
he gave her everything they had except he took a fork and a plate. He was a very simple
Is
man.
that true?
That's 100% true. He took a fork and a plate and said that's all he needed. He was a very simple man. Um, and, you know, he was an attorney, so he had, you know, he could easily provide for himself. But Reed was he was a free spirit. Every summer he would ride his Harley across country from Kentucky to California. He would take the same path. He was, you know, he loved fishing. If he didn't show up in court one day, the judge knew he was fishing and they would hold the cases and wait for him. He was just a free spirit and a different kind of person. But that shows you they didn't have any animosity. There was no anger. There was no somebody did something to somebody. It was just that the two of them could not make it work as a couple. And they tried off and on for many years, probably 5 or 6 times after they got divorced to get back together and they'd have a relationship. And she always said if they could be married and live in separate houses that it would work out. But that's not how marriage works. So he was a very close member of our family. My cousin was his best friend. So there was never anything negative there. He was a family member, regardless of the fact that they weren't married anymore.
Wow. And tell me about the what I would assume is an award-winning new husband to allow
Yes.
that to happen. Talk to me about that guy.
So, yeah, so my sister's current husband, he is amazing. He's so supportive. They have such a great relationship. You know, he's so funny. And when he found out what was going on with Reed, he was nothing but supportive. And she had an open conversation with him that she felt like that she really needed to be a part of helping Reed. I mean, it was we had a lot of hope that he was going to be able to survive, but the type of cancer that he had, it was very unlikely that he was going to be able to survive with the treatments offered in this country. And Will looked at that and he saw that, and there wasn't a bit of jealousy. There's not a jealous bone in his body. He's nothing but supportive. And in fact, you know, whenever she would visit Reed, you know, either she would do that alone or sometimes Will would come with her. And so he met Reed, and he was actually one of the ones at Reed's bedside when he passed away with my sister holding her hand. Just an amazing human being.
Wow, he is an amazing human being. That's amazing. I just keep, as you tell that, I keep thinking about the conversation that she had with them and assuming all sorts of things. We won't dive into that too deep, but it's not our business. But I got to say,
Yeah.
you know, I listen to a lot of podcasts because I have to listen to a lot of business information for clients and you know to do this and keep this show going upward. And I constantly hear how vogue it is to create boundaries in your life. And I have to admit that every time I hear that, I get a little questionable. I just question whether that's always the solution. Obviously, there are extreme cases where
Right.
people are super unhealthy and they're doing things that are dangerous or whatever that really require boundaries with a human being in our life. But I always bristle a little bit when I hear create boundaries. And you bring the ex brother-in-law in your home, and you dive in and help him, and your sister participates, and the husband is there holding hands at the death. And forgive me if I'm a little flippant. I've had a couple of parents die. I've had a couple of brothers die. I've had my best friend die. I am a little, I'm not callous to death, but I'm used to it. It's something that's been in my life. So maybe I'm taking this a little too lightly, but I really am genuinely impressed that that very unusual situation happened and what it did to you. Before we talk about what it did and compelled you to do and helped you do, I want to go back a little bit and have you just share whatever you're willing to share. You know, you wrote a book called Unshackled, and what it's about is why medicine is failing doctors and patients, the subtitle roughly. And I'd like you to not talk about it yet. I want to save that and the very practical advice that you have for entrepreneurs in a minute. But I want you to talk about the difficult part that you were in while you were in the system, and how that transpired, if you would.
Sure. So when I finished fellowship training, I entered the world of academic medicine. I was actually recruited to the Medical University of South Carolina in Charleston, South Carolina, this Storm Eye Institute. I was on faculty there for about 4.5 years. And so initially I was in academic medicine. And then I wanted, I was pregnant with my first son. I wanted to be back closer to my family in Charleston, West Virginia, the other Charleston. And so, I migrated back this way. And I joined a group private practice. And I worked in that practice. The practice was fairly new. It was actually colleagues of mine that I had graduated from high school with. Interestingly, 8 students from my high school graduation class became ophthalmologists. That's just a little side note. Like, I don't know how that all worked out, but 8 of us did. So,
And let me just clear, ophthalmologists are by definition surgeons, not just eye doctors, but surgeons,
right,
not just doctors and MDs, but surgeons of
right.
the eye. Is that true?
That's true. So
Okay.
we go through medical school, we go through internal medicine residency, we go through ophthalmology residency where we learn to do the eye surgery.
Hmm.
And then we can subspecialize in a part of the eye. So the eye is very small, but still you can have a subspecialty. So my subspecialty is in the cornea, the front window of the eye, and the lens, the cataract. So of the whole body, I specialize in 500 micrometers of the whole body. That's
It is an incredibly important five
yeah,
millimeters.
yeah, it is 500 micrometers.
As a
It's an
contact
incredible.
lens wearer, I'm going to just say that.
So, so anyway, where were we? I forgot where we were.
So
Oh, okay. So, so
you're hunting in the practice. You're still there, by the way, in that city, right?
yes,
But yeah,
yes,
go back to when you joined that, what
yes.
happened?
Yeah, so I joined that group and they had only been as a group for about a year. They had formed their group pretty recently too. And I was looking to get back into my hometown near my family for assistance with my children, to be around my family, my kids to grow up with their grandparents. And I was thinking of starting my own practice at the time. I was going to. And they approached me and they said, "Hey, why would you do that? We've already done all that. Just join us and you can become a partner in so many years." And so I looked at it and I thought, okay, that makes sense. So I helped them grow that practice. It was very fresh when I started, and I certainly grew my cornea practice. Certainly grew that. And I grew my part of the practice very large. And
How many
after
years,
about
may I ask? What was that span of time during that growth from the
I
beginning?
grew very quickly. I grew within 6 months to a year. I was very busy.
Wow.
And then it just continued.
Mm.
There is a great need for my services in our state. And so, and my skill set is good. I trained with the best. And so I got busy very, very quickly. And so about 3 years in, it was time. We started having discussions about the buy-in as a partner. And we negotiated for almost a year because the contract they presented me was horrible. The contract, I would have been making less money as a partner than as an employee, which makes no sense for anybody in any business. And then the buy-in would have taken me 5 years. On top of that, I would have been so much in the hole by the time I got there. I just looked at it and I gave it to 3 different attorneys, independent ones, to get their opinions, and they agreed with me. This is ludicrous.
Mm.
So I said, well, if I'm going to spend all this money and do this, I might as well just start my own practice and do it myself because I've got all this. And to show you the type of business people that they were, I didn't have a non-compete.
Mm.
So basically, I just said, I'm not doing this. If you can't do better than this, I'm leaving. And so they said, well, this is it. So I just picked up my practice and I left and I moved 10 minutes across town. And so that's what got me to start my own practice. I didn't want to leave the area. I didn't want to start over again. And I really love business. I've always loved the business side of things just as much as I love taking care of patients. And I wanted to do it. So I just kind of took the leap without
Wow.
a lot of fear.
Well, I want to, before we talk about you landing after the leap, I just want to dissect just for a second what a typical medical student happens to go through financially, because not a lot of us know that. And just because
Right.
I'm close to one, I happen to know it. But entrepreneurs don't realize. We just think that people go to medical school because they're really smart and that all works out kind of like a regular student experience, but really hard. And then they're rich the rest of their life. And it's not exactly that cut and dry, is it?
It isn't. So the MCAT, which is the test that you take to get into medical school, is known as being one of the most difficult exams of anything. And you have to be top in your class. You have to be on top of your game. I talk about this a little bit in my book, but doctors, later in life, when you see doctors with mental health issues and those that abuse prescription drugs and different things that happen, and you hear all this negative stuff, you don't know what that person went through from the beginning. And we are screened so ridiculously well screened. You don't get into medical school unless you are top of the top. So you get into medical school, and then so you're 4 years out of college. You go 4 years through medical school, and then you start residency. In residency, doctors are paid anywhere from $30,000 to $60,000 a year.
Mm.
Now, this is a person with a doctorate degree that's gone 8 years outside of high school.
Mm.
But the amount of hours that they work, often 80 to 120 a week, so that money equates to less than minimum wage.
Wow.
And most doctors graduate from medical school on average with $250,000 in debt. So,
And if you go out of state and you go to a
it's
private
more.
school, it could be
Right,
twice that,
right.
right?
That's right. I mean, that's
Frequently.
for in-state. That's right. So then physicians are, depending on if you do a fellowship after your residency training, you're near 31 years old before you're even able to go out and start earning any type of substantial income. And you're so far in the hole at that point that you're definitely not rich, not even close to the concept of that. For really, maybe the first 10 years of your career outside of your training, you're just digging out of a hole and you're just working yourself just to the ground. So,
So more than a
quite
decade getting ready, and then more than a decade just getting some reasonable income.
right,
And yet
right,
the partners are offering you, in that context, they're offering you less than they're giving a medical assistant next to them
right,
in an hourly basis, right?
right.
Okay, well, that paints
So,
the
so
picture.
yeah, and as doctors, we don't get any business training. We get none of this in medical school. We get none of it. I mean, heck, they don't even teach us about vitamins and nutrients, the main fuel for the body. We're taught prescriptions. We're taught in medical school to look at a symptom and prescribe a pill. That's how ingrained that whole system is.
Mm.
We don't learn about vitamins. We don't learn about sleep. We don't learn about, the main things that keep your body going, the proper foods to eat. We don't learn any of that. And so it's really frustrating, the basic necessities of human health that you should be teaching your patients, but you can't even do that for yourself because you're working so hard and grinding so hard. You don't even have time to do that for yourself as a physician.
Wow, that's
So
interesting.
physicians,
I've never thought of that. Help me out with this. So there's kind of the big five in the most important things that keep you alive, right? And it's nutrition, exercise or movement, sleep. What else am I missing? The other two.
Minimizing stress is huge,
Mm-hmm.
and vitamin supplementation, because you can't get all the nutrients you need from food.
Mm-hmm.
So, so those are critical for basic human health. It's kind of like putting gas in your car. So we're not taught that, and so that realization came to me when I was taking care of Reed, and so this is what he taught me. It never, until I was going through the healthcare system with him, and I was watching this happen to him, and I was watching him being broke apart into a tumor, and that was it. Like, not being seen as a whole person, just being seen as a tumor. And all these drugs being thrown at him, although while they're giving them to him, they're saying, well, we know this isn't going to work.
Mm.
It has no chance of working, but this is all we know what to do.
Mm.
It was just extremely frustrating. And it's what led me to say, hey, there has to be something more here. Like, what are we missing? Like, what was I not taught in medical school? Like, why did he get this to start with? He did all the right things. Like, he's taking care of his body. He's working out. He's exercising. He's eating well. He's not drinking. Like, this can't just be genetics. Something has happened. So
Did they
that's
catch
what's
it right away? Was it like,
Oh, well, so Reed had this rice size lump in his left thigh for many years.
like a grain of rice?
Like a grain of rice. He didn't tell any of us, it was just there. And so, he's talking to somebody one day, so many years later, a buddy or something, and he's like, yeah, I've had this. It's been here for years. And he said, you might want to get that checked out. So then Reed decides to go to a local dermatologist who says, yeah, she kind of palpates it and says, yes, I'm worried about that. It's in the muscle tissue. I'm going to send you to an oncologist. You need to have that removed. Let's see what that is. And so he was referred to one of the large prominent cancer centers on the East Coast. They made a mistake of cutting into it. So when you have a suspicious lesion, you don't cut into it. Cutting into something spreads it. You're supposed to fully excise it with a wide margin, and you're supposed to make sure all of your margins are clean. So that was not done. This tumor was cut into, the margins were not clean, and Reed was sent on his way, and he was told, hey, let us know if it starts growing again.
Mm.
And at the time, he was very private. He didn't tell any of us this was going on. This was one of the times when he and my sister had taken a break from each other. They had gone on an Alaskan cruise together around May of that year of 2017. And that cruise ship and them confined was not the place for them to test their love again. And so when they got back from the cruise, they parted ways, and he went his way and she hers. And it was a few months later that he went to the doctor and got that biopsy and all that done. He called me around Christmas time that year, and I could tell that something sounded different with him, but he didn't tell me what was going on. He was very private, and he didn't want to worry anybody. He didn't say anything, but he just sounded different. And, I asked him about it, and he promised he was fine, and he would call me back a few months later, and that he would be back in touch. And the next thing I know, I'm getting a call from my cousin who shared an email that Reed and he had a business together, and they shared an email, and my cousin had come across an email from the cancer center talking about the diagnosis, and he found it accidentally and brought it to me and said, what is this? And my heart dropped because I knew it was bad. As a physician, when I read it, I just knew it was bad. And by then, the cancer had spread to behind his ear, to his lungs. He was coughing up blood. And that was the point that I came in. That was the point that I found out when he was given 6 months to live. They didn't even give him the diagnosis of the tumor he had. And he was vomiting blood and still putting his suit on and going to court every day because he loved to work. He loved his job. So that's where I came in. So the frustration of how he was handled, the frustration of how he was handled after the diagnosis, these are the things that led me to seek functional medicine. These are the things that led me to study and get a degree in functional medicine. My sister, who is an integrative dietitian for the Institute for for functional nutrition. She is amazing. She speaks and writes on a national level for many. She's ghostwriter for many of the prominent functional medicine physicians in our country.
What's her
She had been
name?
encouraging. Her name is Kelly Blake.
Hmm.
Blake is her married name with that wonderful husband, Will, who's so supportive. Yeah.
Yeah.
But she had been encouraging me to study functional medicine for years, and I just had not had the time. And so finally, I made the time. And I completed a 2-year program in 7 months on overdrive because I was trying to figure out the best way that I could help him. And I dove into the oncology section first thing. And so, I learned root cause medicine. I learned something that traditional medicine didn't teach me, which is how to take care of somebody, why you're sick, and actually how to treat the root of the problem to make you better instead of just giving you a pill for every symptom that you have to mask it.
Yeah, I want to hear a couple of those specific highlights at the end in a minute. Tell us a little bit about the transition business-wise when you said to that, you went from one very generous in your family, one very generous contract to, it sounds like in this case, not a very generous contract. And you had to make the leap, and there you are, alone out on the street, so to speak.
Yeah.
Tell me about the very beginning of that.
Sure. Well, in my fellowship training, it was in a private practice, the Cincinnati Eye Institute, which is one of the top eye care practices in the world. And so because it was in a private practice, I saw how business was run a little bit in an eye care model, right? So I knew the proper way to do things. And honestly, while I've never had any formal business training, my grandmother taught me how to count money, how to count change before I could read. I remember her giving me this big jar and dumping it out and making me count it. And I remember her always telling me how important it was to know how much money you have and where it's going and who you're giving it to, and to be able to count your change, because if you don't, people might steal your money from you. Like she grew up in the Great Depression, and she just drilled that into my head. She taught me how to write checks and balance a checkbook and do all those things. So I never had any formal business training, but I learned a lot from her. And so I suppose I know I approached my practice just like balancing a home checkbook. I pay attention to finances closely. I like to know where every dime and cent is going, which is good when you own your own practice, which was something they were not doing at the other practice. Their overhead at that practice, which is typical for a group private practice, was around 75 or 80%.
Wow.
And my overhead, I'm able to keep at 48% because I govern what comes in and out of here, right? And I can be very frugal where I need to be, and I can spend where I need to be. So, of course, it was a lot of a learning curve, but the basic idea of getting credentialed with health insurance companies, I had found a billing and credential company that I liked to help me. I found an electronic software, electronic medical record by talking to other colleagues in other practices. You network a lot, which is really important, and getting recommendations from them and doing demos of softwares and things like that. So I knew the basic necessities of what was needed to start and run a practice just from my experience practicing. So, and actually, as far as staff goes, as far as team members go, I actually took 4 with me. 4
Wow.
people came with me that worked with me when I was in that group practice. So
That says a lot about you.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, one of them is still with me. Almost 8 years later, she's still with me.
Wow.
Yeah.
That says a lot about you. How many patients in that first year before you took a leap, did you take with you?
So I probably had about close to 4,000 patients by then, and I
Wow.
would say 95% of them came with me. And those that didn't come immediately have found me and come even years later, even 8 years later. I get people showing up. Oh, I found you. I finally found you. I've been looking for you all this time. I mean, they were nasty when I left. They didn't tell people where I went, even though we sent letters, etc. We're a small area, but people are still finding me.
What? How?
So
4,000's a lot. So what period of time
yeah,
is that
well,
specifically? You told me generally,
yeah.
but
It was
4,000.
almost 4 years. So, I mean, if you consider, ophthalmologists, I see about 50 patients a day.
Really? Wow, that's a lot of work.
So that's a lot of work. So, I'm in surgery one day a week and I'm seeing about 50 patients a day the other days. And so that adds up pretty quickly.
Yeah. From the day your dad moved to Texas till today, you've been working hard.
I've been grinding. Yeah.
You've got, and I love that what you said about the overhead because, with the margin that you create, you can be a little more objective about patients and what you do for them and the price you charge and the
Right.
itemizations and all those things. And you can service the debt and have a life at some point. Is that true to say?
Right. That's 100% true. And then also what doctors don't understand because we're not taught business is that there are so many tax benefits to owning your own business. When you're an employed physician, you don't get the benefits of, if I buy a piece of equipment that I need to service my eye patients that I'm billing charges for and able to recoup money on, the equipment's paying for itself, but at the same time I can depreciate the equipment against my income that I'm earning. So if you are, a W-2 employed physician, you can't have any of those benefits.
They're doing it.
And that's what a lot of doctors don't understand. That's how come you can go into private practice and you can make less money, you think, but actually you're making more because you can govern your overhead, you can have the benefits of the tax advantages and you're providing a service to the community, you're providing jobs for people. So there's so many things that doctors don't know about that because we're not taught.
So let me ask you, 4,000 going with you, how did you get them to follow you if they're not forwarding phone calls and giving information? How did they find you and come?
So letters were sent out. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
letters were sent out that
Mm-hmm.
I was leaving, but I don't recall them having my address in there. But they're my patients, right? So it's a doctor-patient relationship. They don't belong to that practice, and you can't keep your doctor. Legally, you can't keep your doctor from a patient.
Yeah.
So, I took those team members with me. I think we took logs like with patients information that we could call and be in touch with them, word of mouth, and a lot of them had a need. Like what I treat and do, my area is so subspecialized, that 500 micrometers of tissue, just there was nobody in that practice, even though they tried to say that they could do what I do. There was no other subspecialist in that practice. They were all general ophthalmologists. No one was fellowship trained. So if someone did stay behind, the patient can quickly tell if somebody knows what they're doing or not doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, just kind of like that. I mean, they all just kind of trickled in. There was never a time. Listen, before there was a window before my practice was ready. My practice was supposed to be ready April 1st with the build out and everything I was doing. But there was some delay because there's always delay on construction and whatnot, right? So
Yes.
it got pushed back to like May 1st. But I finished my other practice March 31st. Well, there was a whole month where I had patients I needed to take care of, people with cornea transplantation. Sometimes they can't wait a month to be seen. So I needed an office, I need a place to work. So for the first couple of weeks, my team and I were going to Panera every day and getting that big conference room. And I mean, I
Oh
remember
my word.
we had bankers boxes of information and computers and trying to set everything up. I remember patients coming to Panera to sign up for surgery.
They get a sandwich, a bowl of soup, and replace their cornea.
Listen, you make it work. Whatever you have to do, you make it work. So they came into Panera to sign up for surgery. Now I had already examined them when I had like a real office,
Yeah,
but they
and
came.
I'm gonna, it's not like you're that dentist who's doing liposuction in his garage, but I mean, you are sticking to your specialty, but you're just doing it in a
Yes.
restaurant. That's what, yeah.
Yeah. Panera. And so then I was able to rent out a room at the hospital. Like the hospital had one room they could give me to see patients out of that could get me by until my practice was open. And this room had one place where the patient could check in, and then I had one little exam room where I could see people.
Mm.
And I still had like 50 people on my schedule. So I remember there being a line out the door because we could only fit so many people in there, so many bodies between my staff and my equipment. There was a line of people like all the way down the hall as far as you could see,
Oh
trying to
dear.
just in one at a time to get in their exam and leaving. I felt like I was in a third world
I
country.
got to ask you two questions about that. So, were the Panera associates upselling your services?
Actually, no, I don't think they were. I thi- That's a good idea. I
You
didn't
you
have
should have thought of that. You would have
I
doubled
was too
everything. Yeah.
I was too shy and probably too reserved at the time and probably thinking, "Oh my gosh, what am I doing? I hope they don't come back here and kick me out because I'm bringing all these people in this free conference room." And so we just kept buying bagels and coffee and just coming in there.
A good
So,
thing laptops were small back at that point and not
yeah,
those
yeah.
big giant ones that originally came out. The second thing that I'm curious about is it's we all think everything's sterile in a medical environment. Like how are you doing all of that in a back room
So,
of a Panera?
So I wasn't doing any surgery on anybody there. I wasn't touching anybody there. This was all for paperwork purposes
Just in
and for
conversations and such.
conversation, signing consent forms for surgery. These are people who I already had seen in my practice that I left, and they knew they needed surgery, and I just needed to get them on my schedule. Now, I still had privileges at the hospital where I operated, and I still operate there to this day at the outpatient surgery center. So I didn't lose any of that. That was my personal privileges. It had nothing to do with my practice.
Yeah.
So that's where I was working on people. I was not operating on people at
The
Panera
Panera.
with butter knives. Like
You
that was
weren't.
no.
Well, I thought maybe you were opening their eyes and like checking, but no touch. Okay, well that makes me feel better. But the cliche in entrepreneurial worlds are that
Yeah.
it is we went to a restaurant and we drew the plan up on the back of a napkin, and the rest is history. And
No.
you literally went to a restaurant. You went to the restaurant. You had a napkin. You were having conversations. It's amazing. So
Yes.
that's a lot of customers or patients in your world. To start paying money and getting insurance to pay money with. That's amazing. Your skill clearly translated. Was that all it took to get those people to come over? What else, what are the other factors that get them to jump ship
Yeah.
besides your specialty?
Yeah. Well, I have a very good bedside manner. So that, I mean, I'm
You're
not
very
just saying that.
personable. Yeah.
The patients like my bedside manner, and I really feel very motherly to my patients. So I take care of them, and they know I'm going to take care of them. And I always tell my team members, in my office, I have a wonderful team, and I always tell them that for every one person they interact with, they should know that statistics show that person's going to talk to 35 other people. So we don't want them to say bad things to other people. We want them to say good things. And if we keep that in mind, that's really word of mouth is how my business flourished so much in the beginning, and how it continues to flourish is word of mouth.
Especially at Panera. Well, I think that it's clear that we all have heard the customer service statistics a million times. They're old, and now there's new ones and such. But in a doctor situation, it's even more true. I didn't
I
realize
agree.
that it's 36. You're saying both ways, and
Five.
yeah, 35. So if you're running and orchestrating a business like you are that helps people in the way you do, you really have to make sure that you're training your staff and emphasizing daily to your staff that we're not just trying to get rid of all the negative comments. We're not also, this would be the temptation is, I know that you're an undergraduate or you're newly married or whatever the case may be for your staff. They would be very tempted to just do what's necessary and get home to whatever, school, family, new husband, new wife, whatever. And they would be very tempted to just take the neutral situation. But you jumping out on your own with all that debt and being on, having to pay the past rent to Panera, you would have to make sure that they are focused on getting the positive 35, right?
That's right. And I have always had tremendous Team members always have been tremendous, and that is a reflection of the physician. It is my job as the captain of the ship to make sure that the people around me reflect me and that they take care of my patients the way that I want them taken care of. So, of course, I've had people that have not been that way, but they don't last very long. The thing about my office is that we want positive energy. Everything is positive. There's no gossip. There's no somebody's doing this to somebody else behind their back. Everything is everything is good, and we want to keep that. And so, I have a very good team of people that understand that. They want to come to work. They want to feel good. They love the patients as well. And that's because that's what I have attracted, because that's what I want, because I won't settle for anything less than that. And so it's critical, for a physician owning their own practice, that they grasp the customer service aspect of things.
Yeah.
Because if not, your business isn't going to do well, because it is a business, it's your livelihood.
Yeah. So if you had to split percentage-wise, you have a skill and a specialty that they need, and you have to be able to create a great medical outcome or biological outcome. And then you have this other thing where you're creating word of mouth because you're treating people and you're creating relationships that last. Because obviously there's some things in ophthalmology that is repetitive because you have repeat patients. So what's the breakdown? If you had to guess the percent that depends on your skill and the percent that depends on the office's execution of relationships?
So it's either 50-50 or it's a little more heavily weighted on the relationships, because I
Wow.
don't care how good of a doctor that you are. I don't care how good you are. If you make people feel bad, then they don't want to come and see you, right? I mean, you can be the best surgeon on the planet. Obviously, you have to have both. You have to have good surgical outcomes. You have to be a good surgeon, or people aren't going to come and see you either. But I can be the best surgeon and get perfect outcomes. But if I treat my patients poorly and I make them feel bad, like I don't care, they're not going to come back and see me.
Mm-hmm.
Or if one of my team members does that to them, if they have a negative experience when they come in, one of the things we ask people when they're leaving, my front desk receptionist, is, how was your experience today? Is there anything that wouldn't allow you to give us a 5-star experience? If it is, tell me right now so we can fix it. Like,
Oh,
that's one of the things they're trained to say.
I love
Like, I
that.
want to know right now. Yeah.
And say that again. I
So,
want you to say it again.
sure. Yeah. So is there any reason that you did not have, how was your experience today? Was it 5 stars? Any reason you wouldn't give us 5
So
stars?
three
And
things. How was the experience?
mhm,
And then what was the second one?
was it a 5-star
Was it?
experience?
Okay.
Hmm.
How's your experience? Just open. Was it a 5-star experience? And then
Yep.
the catch-all, which is, if it wasn't, please tell me
Yeah.
what was not 5 stars.
Yes. Tell me what was not 5 stars so we can fix it right now. Tell me what I can do right now.
Well,
Because it's so important, especially people ranking you on Google. I mean, Google reviews. I mean, it's just so important to try and keep the problem to a minimum. But also, if there's a problem, I want to know about it so I can fix it. Because if you had a problem with something, then the next person's going to have a problem with it too.
oh, no question.
So, yeah.
Well, it's interesting in our research that I've done in the past, and even one of the recent studies, the outcomes depended on two things in general, besides the financial. The financial is actually second, but these two customer-oriented, outcome-oriented things are interesting. One is, did you make a difference? And in your case, was the medical outcome expected
Right.
or above expected level? But also someone who's thinking, how can I delight? It's that it's not one or the other. I mean, it's not good enough to have a pretty good eye surgery and then have the office be amazing. The office is amazing and the building's so easy and everything's great. And it's not okay, like you say, to have, wow, my eye's all better. I didn't think you could fix it. And yet you guys are just caustic every time I call. You got to have both. Delight. How can I delight? How can we make a difference, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, you gotta-
I want to before we wind down in a second. I was saving the best for last, so let's get into your advice for people that are. I like to bookend things. I want you to talk to the CEO of a mid-sized company who's trying to just change the era, a new era. They're at a crossroads. They want to get this next several years or even this next year better. And all the way down to the 30-year-old that's pretty new in a career and wanting to make a difference in their career. And talk to us about your best 3 to 5 pieces of advice on what you would tell them.
Sure. So the number one piece of advice that I would give anyone is to remember the 80-20 rule. So the 80-20 rule says that 80% of growth in your business is internal. That means work that you do on yourself, not work that you do in your business. Okay. And so 20% is work that you do on your business. 20% of business growth is what you're putting onto your business, but 80% is internal growth. And what that means is if you're not taking care of your mental health, if you're not getting sleep, if you're not eating properly, if you're not exercising, if you're not taking care of yourself spiritually in some fashion, if you don't know who you are and where you're going, then your business is not going to do well. It's not going to go anywhere. So you first have to take time to relax and focus on yourself. That doesn't mean being lazy. That doesn't mean that you're not working. But it means that you have to put time into taking care of yourself, because there's people that just 100% put into their business and they're wondering why it's struggling and why it's not going anywhere and why it's not growing. And it's because they're not taking time to stop and take care of themselves. So that's the number one thing.
Their mind's not working because of the big 5 things we talked about
Yes,
earlier, and they're not as
right.
creative. They're not as good a problem
Right.
solver. They're not
Right.
as friendly in relationship.
Right.
Let me ask you something. I hear the take care of yourself a lot. It's a great piece of self-development advice for sure. But every time I hear it, I think of that Harvard study and other philosophies that have been proven to be great in business around others and relationships. And my own research that showed you better think about the customer and the patient before you think of your own passion and your own money, or it's not a long-term business. And so I think when you say take care of yourself, you're not meaning like I'm an employee and I'm going to think all about me and what I think and I want and what I'm doing and how healthy I am. But really, every aspect of the big 5 should be done with other people, be conversing about it with other people, and reaching outward to have your mental health at its peak. Is that fair to say when you say focus on yourself? You're really talking, including your own network and your own people around you at work and such?
So what I mean is, if you aren't taking care of yourself such that you feel good on the inside, if your mental health isn't good, if you aren't sleeping, then you're coming to work and you're snapping at your employees, you're snapping at your patients or whatever business that you're in. You're not in the highest version of yourself to be able to present yourself to the world in the best fashion possible. So I'm not talking about it selfishly. I'm talking about it selflessly. So you take care of yourself so that you can show up better at work, as a parent, in your life, in your relationships. You have to take time to take care for yourself first.
I think that's a powerful clarification that we've just uncovered. So you're saying, look, the first thing you've got to do is take care of yourself biologically so that you can do all those other things.
Right.
Yeah. Because that's mentally too, when you take care of yourself biologically. It's all wound up together, as you've discovered in your functional expertise.
Yes, in my functional medicine.
Yes. Okay. What is the next piece of advice you would tell them?
Next pieces of advice is to have a network. So you need a strong network of people around you that you can turn to if you have a problem, or they can come to you. So a lot of times, and we don't learn this as doctors, and unfortunately I didn't learn this till later in life, actually only recently over the last couple of years, but it's been tremendous. When you meet someone, you keep that contact. Somebody in your life that you've worked with, even for example, a college professor, a fellowship mentor, somebody that you have had connection with. You need to maintain that, whether it's send them a Christmas card once a year, send them a text message every now and then, hey, thinking about you. You need to maintain a network of people around you, because you never know when you might need someone's help or you might be able to help them. And a lot of times, we just, if someone we're not working with them or seeing them all the time, we just think they kind of drop off of our radar. But there's so much power, and it's called a mastermind, right? When two or more minds get together and brainstorm a problem, it's called a mastermind. There's so much more power in a combination of minds than your mind alone. So you need to have people that you can brainstorm things with, that you can bounce things off of, trusted resources.
Yeah.
So that's number 2.
I totally agree with that. I think everyone regrets a little bit that they haven't kept track of their people well enough if they're smart and they get through some of their career. And for me, I've had a few really big mistakes. I used to publish a magazine. Somehow I walked away from that experience. It was back before digital was everything and technology was everything, and we had, phones even. But I walked away. We had 145,000 people reading that thing, seeing my picture every day. I walked away with no names from that. And
you walked away with no names?
No names. And it's just because it wasn't the era, and it was technically against my contract to walk out with data, and but heavens, like, you spend a few weeks on your own time memorizing these people that you've interacted with.
Right.
But it's not like I didn't walk away with anyone at work, but those subscribers around the world and around the country, my word, it was a gold mine, and somehow I walk out with nothing in my head for that. The other thing that experience that relates to that, first of all, I've got a couple of books and research projects that show how true what you just said was. And the exponential increase in your ability to create outcomes if you're talking to strangers. In one case, we called it, you're talking to people in your outer circle, and then also talking to adjacent experts, people that serve some of the same people, and just constantly getting new contacts in your industry and adjacent to your industry. But something that really was interesting to me is there's a way to be not just an expert, but to be a professional leader in an organization and keep yourself and your mind positioned on that too, so that when you interact with people, that's one of your interests, and you create an expertise there, because those conversations can yield different things than being an expert, at the eye and things, or whatever you are listening. But the other thing is just a person. And people get nervous about that. I'm not talking about I won't say the name of the company, but there used to be a famous set of commercials. We all know who it is, where you're, friends and family, like, sick 'em on the family. No, I'm not talking about that. But if you're trying to be the best person you can, and you're grabbing those relations and keeping the data, not just in social media that someone else owns, but your own ownership of that data, you can do so many unforeseen things in the future with them. And one time I had an hour drive after an airport, and I was going to talk about something that's related to what you just brought up. And so I went back in my life, and I started concentrically, like my immediate family now and then I went outward, like my school, my teams, my little league teams. I went out through all of the concentric organizations I was involved with, or classes, or things like that in school, and fraternities, etc., and religion and things like that. And I went through all of those experiences, and I had such a long time to drive, and I was heading into this, that I estimated, and I kept count, and I counted up in estimates on each of those blocks or those circles how many people I'd had significant interactions with. Like, not that I never talked to them and I was just in the same room, but did I have a conversation with someone? 15,000 people.
My goodness.
And that's,
my goodness.
It's not like I'm special. After that experience of doing that, from yesterday all the way back till when I was 6 entering kindergarten, I'm convinced that everyone that has a reasonably responsible life has met and had significant interactions with about 10,000 people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially if you're, a business owner, or in, in healthcare, gosh, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands.
4,000 in 1 year for you. Holy
Yeah,
cow.
exactly.
Yeah. Keep that data of your people. They're your people. They're your
They're my
people.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great piece of advice. Okay. Give us one parting shot more before I let you do something else quick.
Yeah. So, and the final thing I would say is to have a mentor or mentors.
Oh,
So, very, very important to have people that you trust, whether these are people that you pay as a business mentor or trusted colleagues, people that you can go to that can help keep you on track. So, I have a couple of different business mentors that I meet with a couple of times a month to help keep me online with growing my business and reaching my goals. A mentor can push you far beyond where you can push yourself. I have a personal trainer that I work out with a couple of times a week. I consider him a mentor from the health perspective. I have a marketing and branding mentor. So mentors can be in all different aspects, but you need to have a mentor to help keep you on track with where you're going in life and to achieve your goals.
yeah. People need to get into your book and read about all these things. These are terrific pieces of advice for a career. They are like the big five for your biology. These are the big three for your career
Yes,
for sure.
right.
What wonderful advice. Okay, I want to give you a couple minutes before we leave. I like to do this for my guests. I want you to give us a blatant, not humble pitch. Where do we find you? How we can get this book? Just tell us anything you want about helping yourself out. I want to give you the right to do that.
Yeah, thank you so much. So you can connect with me. My website is www.bellac.com, and that's B as in boy, ELLA, S as in Sam, EE.com. Bella C means beautiful vision. That's the trademark for my practice, my ophthalmic practice, which I have franchised my model. So you can contact me there via email or phone. My book, Unshackled: Why Medicine is Failing Doctors and Patients and How We Can Break Free, will be available here in a few weeks on Amazon, Kindle, Barnes and Noble, Ingram Sparks. It will be in paperback, hardback, ebook, and then I'll be doing an audio book version as well. So check that out. It speaks to the broken healthcare system. It ties Reed's story throughout the book, so it keeps it entertaining as it's also presenting statistics. It speaks to how your doctors were trained and what we go through in order to be able to put our white coats on and stand in front of you and say, "How can I help you today?" It will hopefully incite you to join my movement. My movement is an emancipation movement for patients and physicians away from the traditional healthcare system into a model where doctors can take better care of themselves such that they can take better care of their patients, and for patients to stand up and demand something more than what they're currently getting. So my book is going to cause a big paradigm shift in medicine, and I'm looking for people to join that movement and reach out to me to talk to me about that and how they can help.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Listen, since I get to be the host, I'm going to pull a fast one here, and I got to ask you one more question because you just
Okay.
mentioned something that I want to know about, and it's not just give us contact information for your sister and her husband because they're so amazing, because they are. Uh, anyway, here it is. So if you're a young person and you've gone through medical school, there's a lot of those people out there, and they have amassed some debt to do so, as you have. Um, how viable is going out on your own in a world where I heard this the other day? You just sparked this thought. They said, hey, if you have people that are in your congregation or your family or something that need to get up on that debt and start paying it down, they need to make sure they end up somewhere that's in a procedural business in medicine. Is that true, or can you get on top of your debt just being a great doctor with a specialty besides family practice?
So I do think that you need to have some type of cash pay option for what you do for patients, for clients, not just patients. And so, looking into things like the aesthetics side of things, looking into the wellness industry, vitamin supplementation, Patients are wanting, there's a huge interest in preventative medicine and how can I take better care of myself and prevent myself from getting sick. And so instead of just taking traditional insurance based models from your patients, you really need to look into how to incorporate cash pay procedures and options in your practice to thrive as a business owner. And if I could go back and start over from the time I got out of my fellowship training, knowing what I know now, I would have started my own practice from the beginning. I didn't know, but I lost a lot of ground. I learned a lot along the way, practicing in academic medicine and group private practice, but knowing the benefits of owning your own business and what you can achieve, I would have done it from the beginning. And I have a passion for teaching doctors how to do that. That's one of the things that I want to do, is help doctors understand how they can own their own businesses and be profitable. So please, anybody listening that has that desire, please reach out to me and let's see how we can move forward together, because that is one of my missions, is to train doctors how to do that.
Dr. Heather Skeens, amazing information. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was nice to talk to you again.
So nice.
Thank you for joining us to get leaders unstuck and thriving with their teams. You've heard a little bit about the power of bold encounters and leadership. Watch on. Go to full episodes with the iconic expert interviews at markspencercook.com/podcast. And please subscribe. My site takes you directly to YouTube video and podcast versions. Please make comments, share this with your friends. Also, reach out to us to just brainstorm your priorities, challenges, events, or how bold encounters might help. Visit windfallpartners.com, click the Let's Talk button without obligation, and reach out. I look forward to speaking. Thank you for joining us. Now, let's lead with bold encounters today.